Hi, and welcome to the Teaching Corner. Today I want to talk to you about the brain and how the brain works when we read. So the human brain wasn't actually designed for reading. The human brain was designed for spoken language. So the parts of the brain that we use for reading are actually parts of the brain that also help us with speech. But what happens in a normal brain, if you're to put your two fists together, we can imagine that this is the brain. This would be the front and this would be the back. So if we were to open up our skull and plop it in, that's what it would look like. So we read with our eyes here in the front, and then it throws that information to the back of our brain right here where your thumbs are. That's your occipital lobe. So that's why you see stars if you bash the back of your head, because that's the part of our brain that processes visual stimuli. Then what's supposed to happen is it should go to the left side of the brain. And there are two parts on the left side of the brain. The first part is the Wernicke's area, and that helps to break language apart. So when we see the word cat, it's the part of our brain that breaks it down into k, a, t. Then it goes to the Broca's area, and this is the part of the brain that puts language back together and allows us to say it. So that's the part of the brain that would take that k, at and put it together and say cat, and then we would be able to say it. The difficulty with students that have dyslexia is oftentimes that visual stimuli will get sent to the back of the brain, the occipital lobe, and instead of going to the left side of the brain, it will often go to the right side of the brain. The right side of the brain is where we have the creative centers in our brain. It's where we tend to deal with music and art. So what happens is the students will often then attach that word to a picture. So if they're talking about cat, they might attach it to a picture of a cat that they've previously seen. Or what a lot of students do is they'll take those letters, C-A-T, and almost take a picture in their brain with it, and every time they see that word, they then say cat. This is what we call sight reading or sight words, when our kid is able to look at a word and immediately know what it is without having to sound it out. So students with dyslexia have to have average to above average IQ in order to be labeled dyslexic. And a lot of times these students are able to hide in our classrooms until about the 4th grade. So what happens in the 4th grade that causes so many of these students to be identified? Well, in 1st and 2nd grade, our students are learning to read. We're teaching students how to read different words and how to put those together into sentences. Around 3rd grade and 4th grade, we stop teaching them to read and we're reading to learn. Now we expect students to know how to read, and we're using that information to then read and acquire new information in science and reading and math and all of those other subjects. So what happens in the 4th grade too is we go from relatively simple 1 or 2 word syllables to words that are, 3 or 4 syllables long. So you'll have your root word and then a prefix and a suffix. Students that have learned to break down those words on their own are able to decipher those words all by themselves. But students who have learned solely based on sight and have made pictures with those words aren't able to break down those multisyllabic words. So basically, the teacher ends up having to tell them what every new word is because they're not able to break it down for themselves. So what Orton-Gillingham does is it forces the brain through auditory drills, visual drills, tapping, dividing words into syllables. It forces the brain, instead of going straight to a picture, to then go to this side of the brain where the Wernicke's and Broca's area are able to pull the word apart and put it back together. I wanted to show you using your hands so that if you didn't have access to a printer or have a lot of funds, you could still show your students how to understand how the brain works. But there is a brain hat, and I'll put a link down below that you can download this off the computer. I suggest printing it on heavier paper, but students can color it, and it shows you back here the occipital lobe. It shows you on the right side the creative side of the brain, and it also shows the students the Wernicke's and the Broca's area so that as you're talking about it, they can actually physically see it. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, please like and subscribe, share it with your friends, and I'll see you later. Bye!